Hello world. Patricia, wait a minute, let me get set down. Patricia O'Connor here and Frida Reba Darcy today on the Bonsai Balcony. It is the beginners, more of the beginners series, episode 3 of the beginners series on watering. And we did a show not too long ago on watering on the Bonsai Balcony, but that was watering in general as it pertains to us and our heat issues and our balcony and stuff. This is geared for you, the newcomer to Bonsai. Welcome to Bonsai. I'm Patricia O'Connor. My sidekick, partner in crime, I don't know if she's in frame or not, is Frida Reba Darcy. She is a little wiener dog Chihuahua Corgi mix with one ear up, one ear down. But today's show about watering. Watering is the most important part about bonsai. When somebody tells me that they would love to do bonsai, but it is intimidating to them and they're scared, and I just say, get a tree. Learn how to keep that tree alive for a day. Spend part of that day learning how to keep that tree alive for a week. Spend part of that week learning how to keep tree alive for the season, and spend part of that season learn how to keep the tree alive for the next season, and you're off to the races. So as they say, and with nothing more than that, what we're looking at here, these trees all have something in common. I have a thing for Japanese black pines, but the part of the lesson we're going to do today, this could have also been maples, or this could have been dawn redwoods, or this could have been bald cypress. When it comes to watering bonsai, what we're looking at is 3 trees here, and they all have different things in common. They have one thing in common in that they're all Japanese black pines. What they kind of vary in is this one is a very, very small bonsai tree because it's in a bonsai pot, and that is called a mame bonsai pot, which restricts the roots and restricts the amount of substrate it has and how long it can go. Depends on several things. And this is a slightly bigger, still in the same category technically. And what restricts its roots is this pot, and also the amount of substrate it has, and the amount of foliage it has, and the amount of foliage it has, and the amount of foliage it has. But this is not a bonsai pot. This is a little container, just a little pot for seedlings, and it has quite a bit more soil than this one, or this one, and so it also has a lot more foliage to it. So here's the conditions that we should be looking at when we're wondering how we should water our trees. And if somebody were to say, what is the pH, or what should we be looking at? Don't even. Right now, at this stage in the game, tap water is absolutely the stuff that will do the job. That's fine for us. There's plenty of really cool things to learn about bonsai. We don't have to worry, probably in most instances, almost any instance, we don't have, pH is not on us right now. What is on us is how often, how much, and how to. So what we want to do is, when we look at our tree and judge whether or not it needs watering, we are looking at a couple of factors. One, how much foliage does it have in the canopy? Leaves or needles? How much foliage does it have? Does it have a lot of foliage? Does it have a big canopy? That's going to move a lot of water. 85% of the water that it transpires through the leaves is like the same as sweat. It is just keeping the tree calm, cool, and collected. And the other 15% moves the metabolic parts of the tree. It is how we move our hormones and all the other stuff that has to be allocated and moved through the tree day and night, night into day, and all of that stuff, as it happens all the time. That's how that happens, and it's through watering. So we want to one of our factors is how big a vessel our container is. How much does it hold? What is our substrate? How does it, is it hold in soil, or is it something that's going to get wet and then begin to dry out, which is ideal in bonsai. And then so what we were saying is a lot of foliage means that we're going to move a lot of water. A big vessel, a big pot means that we're going to contain a lot of water. A small vessel means that we're going to have less water. So in this case, I'm looking at a lot of foliage for this size tree and a small container. So I'm going to have to check this tree multiple times a day. Those two play in hand, right? A larger tree in a larger container, I may have to worry about it less. But even in like this one, say that this were, instead of this, a much larger container, but it was a pre-bonsai that was bigger, it may have a lot of foliage on it because we're building structure, and all of that foliage means that it may run out of water about the same time as my bonsai tree with restricted roots and a restricted environment, but that also has maybe a little less foliage on it. So those are the considerations. We want to consider how big the vessel is, how big the container is, how long it can hold water, and then we want to look at how much foliage we have and whether or not that means this tree is going to dry out fast compared to other trees that we have, or slow compared to other trees we have. And then the other caveat to that is the day. The day. Is it hot? That's going to move more water. Is it humid? That may move less water. Is it windy? That's going to move more water. Sunny. How sunny? Is it high? Is it a really intense sunny day? All of those things we have to take into consideration when we are curious about whether or not our tree is ready. And when I'm looking down at these guys, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the particles. I've got some a little bit of rocky substrate here, and I've got some fine particles here, and I'm looking at both. I know what the little clay pellets look like when they're dry, and I know what they look like when they're wet. And then the fine particles in between them, I know what they look like when they're dry. And that kind of tells me that, looking at the top of this tree, I can just look at that tree and kind of tell a little bit how it's doing. If it were a question, I might rake back a little. And by a little, I mean just a little bit of the top, and see what it's like down below. Sometimes a tree will look dry, and if you just scratch the surface just a little, not like digging up roots or nothing, but scratch the surface just a little, you see that it's still damp. And that may or may not, depending on the species of tree, tell you to water or not water, but that should be taken into consideration whenever you're trying to make a decision as to how dry your tree is. Just point taken. Some trees like a lot of water, some trees like a little. These like a lot of water, these pointing at bald cypress trees, I like a lot of water. Like I take my big watering can, and I empty one of these to most of one of these most days into this guy, and that water just moves and causes it to push out all those buds and all those sprouts. Something that and tomorrow I'll turn around and do that again. My Japanese black pines, on their sweet spot is about 85 degrees. So if you think it's hot, when it's 85 degrees and stuff, these guys are just getting warmed up, and they love that. Now, higher than that, we start working less on the metabolism and more on just trying to stay cool. The tree stops being as productive as the temperature goes up past 90, for instance. And that's just speaking about these Japanese black pines. My trident maple, I think, is about the same way. Now, my trident maple is the deciduous tree, which means it loses its leaves in the winter. Those leaves are thinner. Their vascular system is thinner. Those guys will go through water faster than the needles on my evergreens. So that's just one thing. So what we want to do is, and these are just some quick tips. To do bonsai, we know we have our trees in small containers, and we know that the amount of water that they have is 100% upon us. It's our responsibility, and our job is to be there every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, water in hand, ready to go. If we look down at the tree and see that it's not time to water yet, then we have to ask ourselves two things. Are we going to work today? You know, will this thing if I'm going to be here all day, I could wait a couple of hours and water this, and that would be the sweet spot. But if I'm going to work in 45 minutes, I should probably go ahead and water this now. If you overwater a tree, that's bad. If you underwater a tree, that's bad. Having said that, let's put that into perspective. It takes weeks or months to overwater a tree to death. One bad hot day where you skipped the watering and the tree's dead. So given those two choices, I would always lean on the side of overwatering rather than underwatering. Right now, we're into our first week in September, and where I live, it's just now going to start to get hot. So I'm not really talking about hooray falls here. We're going to see some 90-degree temperatures more than likely in October. So I have to sit there and stay on my game and make sure that these guys are hydrated. Now, what I'm looking at is super hot day, right? Maybe I went through here and watered these earlier in the day and it was hanging out at 70, and then all of a sudden after lunch, the temperatures just started to skyrocket, and I look and they're not quite dry yet. Well, it would probably be a pretty okay thing for me to go back through and water these trees to cool them down a little bit, as opposed to just, you know, saying, well, I've already watered today, and you're not supposed to overwater black pines. You know, you have to pick your battles. That's one little caveat. We're going to try to keep the show simpler than that. This isn't going to be a show on how to navigate high heat days. Basically, what our deal is that we need to make sure that our trees are watered every single day, and then if it's on hot days, we need to make sure multiple times a day that they are watered. Sometimes you hear people will do tricks like misting the leaves. There are a lot of bonsai trees where watering the leaves is a definite no-no. My oaks, I will just totally wreck the foliage, and it'll look like it's caught some killer disease. If I just watered the foliage the way that I sometimes and frequently, frankly, do with my Japanese black pines. They are known to be a lot more tolerant for that. I don't know that that's still 100% good. However, I do have a lot of dust here, and this also helps keeps them a little cleaner, keeps them a little dust free, and I'm also thinking that that's probably why I have less issues with spider mites, but that's not science. That's just me thinking that works. So when it comes to doing that, some other things on hot day or other things that people will do. So how we water, this is the whole thing. How you water. I got this here, and I'm just pouring this on my concrete balcony. We don't want to blast our trees with water. As you can see, this is putting out quite a bit of water, but it's a light sprinkle. We're not wrecking anything or blasting anything, but we are putting out a fairly large amount of water. And we will do this over the entire surface of the pot until we see about that much water coming out of the bottom. We don't just water the surface and then go on to the next tree. If we're having a hard time getting the tree to soak up, we water the entire surface, go to the next tree, water it, and then come back and do that a couple of more times until we're sure we've got water going all the way through. What we want is we want a lot of water to be laid down right here, and as it starts running through the tree, it's going to pull a vacuum and bring in the oxygen behind it. And it is that exchange of air and oxygen that makes bonsai successful. When you get into a situation where you're underwatering, you could lose a tree, but all of this looks really, really dry, and it starts destroying roots and stuff. When you get in a situation where you've overwatered, that's where our soil becomes anaerobic. It loses its oxygen content. It no longer is able to support metabolism and the microbes and all that other stuff that's going on in there, and it needs to dry out and recover, and then the roots can recover. But that's kind of how we get in and out of that. And it's that balance of air, of oxygen and water that maintains healthy trees and healthy systems. And that's why it's really important to water the tree, to water the tree on top of the soil, and then water it until you see water coming out of the bottom. If you're just watering the top and just watering the top, that's ineffective, and it also will take longer. Parts of it will take longer to dry out, but other parts of it never got wet. Let's see what else. The system will dry out faster when you've watered it all the way through, and as the water runs out, it pulls in air behind it. That's also that. Now this is where we're going to wrap this up. There's a lot more that can be done about watering, but the whole bottom thing is what we've already covered. To repeat ourselves or to get into other little details would be to confuse the issue. Bonsai is mostly completely about watering. If you have got that down, everything else you can live to fight another day. So yeah, here's how you survive the first week. Part of that is light and watering. And this is our little talk about watering. Be ready every day. Some trees like to dry out in between waterings. Some trees like to be wet all the time, like my bald cypress. Some trees that would hurt, like my Japanese black pines. Some trees like my ponderosa like to dry out for a day or two in between. They like to be drier longer is what I'm trying to say. And then I have things like my dawn redwood. They say it likes to have its feet wet, which is to say that if I see the soil completely drying out, I'm also watching the foliage start to drop. And when you see the foliage on your tree start to drop on a microscopic level, you're not seeing the roots that are getting wrecked below the surface. In that way, as is above is below. Welcome to bonsai. That's watering. Make sure you get that down. Feeding and all this other stuff, we can pick up on that as we need to, but that watering thing is all on you, and it's dependent on you, and you need to make sure you're there every day, whether your tree, and know whether or not your tree likes to dry out in between waterings, or whether or not it likes to have its feet wet, or whether or not, like a bald cypress or a wisteria, it likes to stay a little wet all the time. And that's it. That's our little thing about watering. And I appreciate you, and Frida appreciates you, and our next bonsai spot will be next week, probably on Wednesday about this same time. And thank you so much for watching.